My life as a librarian was a quiet rhythm, a predictable flow of days. I found comfort in the order of things, the precise placement of every book on every shelf. Each spine represented a story, neatly cataloged and returned to its rightful place. It was a calm existence, perhaps a little monotonous, but it was mine. Evenings at my small apartment followed a similar pattern. After work, I would make a simple meal, perhaps read a book, or listen to a quiet podcast. My space was tidy, reflecting my need for order and calm. It was a peaceful solitude, a sanctuary from the world's unpredictable chaos. Sometimes, though, the quiet was broken by a memory. I would find myself looking at an old, faded photograph. It showed me as a small child, laughing, held by a man whose face was partially obscured by shadow. My expression was always complicated when I saw it, a mix of wistfulness for a lost past and a deep, lingering resentment. One ordinary afternoon, a sharp knock interrupted my quiet routine. A delivery person, a young man named Michael, stood at my door holding a small, heavy wooden box. It was plain, unadorned, and had no return address anywhere on its surface. A sudden sense of mystery and a touch of unease settled over me. I brought the box inside, my curiosity battling with a vague suspicion. With hesitant fingers, I lifted the lid. Inside, nestled in soft, dry straw, lay two objects: a heavy, intricate brass compass and a piece of old, durable paper. The compass gleamed faintly, its tarnished surface hinting at forgotten journeys. Beneath the map fragment, my fingers brushed against something else. It was a small, folded note, unsigned and written in a hurried hand. I unfolded it carefully, my heart beginning to beat a little faster. The words were brief, but they hit me with an unsettling force. He wanted you to have this. Find the rest. A surge of anger, hot and familiar, washed over me. He, I knew, could only mean my father. This felt like another cruel game from the man who had abandoned me years ago, leaving only questions and a hollow space. I slammed the lid shut on the box, pushing it deep into my closet, wanting to forget it entirely. Days passed, but the box and its contents refused to be forgotten. Despite my anger, the mystery gnawed at me. I found myself distracted at work, shelving books automatically, my mind elsewhere. At home, my peaceful routine felt restless. The quiet no longer brought comfort, only a nagging preoccupation. Finally, unable to resist any longer, I retrieved the box. I took out the compass, its brass cool against my fingers. I spent hours online searching for anything about its unusual design, its nested dials, its strange needles. But there was nothing, no information at all. The compass's mystery only deepened. Then I turned my attention to the map fragment. I spread it out, comparing its strange symbols and rugged coastline to modern maps of the country. Slowly, meticulously, I began to identify the unfamiliar contours. It was a remote part of the coastline, far from my quiet city life. And then I made a decision. Leaving the city felt strange, like shedding an old skin. The train rattled, carrying me further from my quiet library life. Outside, the buildings gave way to green fields, then rolling hills. A mix of hope and anxiety swirled inside me. I was chasing a ghost, my father's ghost, into the unknown. Port Blossom was exactly as I had imagined, small, rugged, and windswept. The air tasted of salt and old wood. People in thick jumpers moved slowly along the docks. They watched me with wary eyes, their faces weathered by the sea. I felt like an outsider, a city bird in a place where only gulls belonged. I went into a small, dimly lit pub, hoping for answers. I pulled out the map fragment, its strange symbols catching the light. But the few men inside just stared blankly or turned away. No one recognized the markings. Some even seemed annoyed by my questions. Discouragement settled heavily on me. Just as I was about to give up, an older man with kind eyes spoke. He had been quietly listening from a corner table. "If anyone knows about old charts and strange waters," he rumbled, "it's Douglas Finch." A flicker of hope ignited within me. Finally, a lead. I found Douglas Finch by the docks, mending a large fishing net. He was a sturdy man with a short, graying beard and watchful eyes. His boat, the Sea Serpent, looked strong and well used. When I approached, he barely looked up. He was gruff and clearly uninterested in my questions about old maps. Then I showed him the compass. His hands, previously busy with the net, paused. He recognized it instantly. "Your father's folly," he muttered, his voice laced with disdain. He called my father a man who chased fantasies, who wasted his life on foolish dreams. His words stung me deeply. Dejected, I spent the rest of the day trying to hire other boatmen. I approached several boats, explaining my need, but each one refused, shaking their heads. They all pointed to the horizon, where dark clouds were gathering. A storm was approaching, they said. My desperation grew with every refusal. I returned to Douglas, my frustration boiling into resolve. I didn't ask for his help this time. Instead, I stood tall, meeting his gaze directly. "I will find a way," I stated firmly, my voice steady. "With or without you, I will find what my father sought." My determination was clear. Douglas studied me for a long moment, then sighed deeply. He seemed to see something in my eyes, a reflection of my father's stubbornness, perhaps. "All right," he grumbled, rubbing his beard. "Once this storm passes, I'll take you." He named a price, a very high price, but I didn't hesitate. The journey was on. 2 days later, the storm had passed, leaving a gray, choppy sea. Douglas's boat cut through the waves. The mood between us was tense, unspoken. He steered, his eyes fixed on the horizon. I stood near the bow, watching the coastline recede. Our journey into the unknown had truly begun. Out on the open sea, the small boat rocked gently. Esther held the geodetic compass tightly in her hands. For days, its needles had remained completely still. Suddenly, the silver and gold needles began to quiver. They spun, then settled, pointing firmly towards the west. Esther felt a jolt of pure astonishment and deep intrigue. Douglas had been skeptical about the compass, calling it a mere trinket. However, he saw the undeniable movement of the needles. His weathered face, usually gruff, became serious and thoughtful. He watched the compass, then looked at the vast horizon. Douglas slowly turned the boat, following the compass's strange direction. His curiosity had finally overcome his initial doubt. The compass led them through thick, swirling mist. Suddenly, a dark shape emerged from the fog. It was a rugged, uncharted island, not found on any of Douglas's official maps. The mist gave the island a mysterious, almost ghostly appearance. Esther felt a mix of apprehension and eager anticipation. They were entering truly unknown territory now. Douglas carefully anchored the boat in a small cove. They went ashore, stepping onto the island's rocky beach. The terrain was wild and untamed, with sharp, uneven rocks. Strange, twisted trees with gnarled branches grew in the harsh soil. An ominous silence hung in the air, broken only by the waves. It felt like a place time had forgotten. With the geodetic compass guiding her, Esther began to navigate. The landscape was difficult, requiring careful steps. She moved with a focused determination, her eyes on the compass. Douglas followed closely, his hand often near his knife. The compass steadily led them towards a towering, high cliff face. Its sheer rock loomed over them, dark and imposing. They reached the base of the imposing cliff. The compass needles vibrated intensely, pointing directly at the rock. Esther began to search, pushing aside thick, clinging vines. Behind a curtain of greenery and loose rocks, they found it, a cleverly hidden cave entrance, almost invisible from a distance. A thrill of discovery ran through Esther. They cautiously entered the cave, which was damp and cool. Water dripped from the ceiling, creating small puddles. Inside, they found signs of a long abandoned camp. There were rusted tools and a collapsed tent covered in dust. In the center, a heavy, sea-worn wooden chest lay on the ground. Its presence filled the air with suspense. Esther knelt by the chest, her heart pounding. It was heavy, and the latch was stiff with rust. With difficulty, she forced it open, a creaking sound filling the cave. Inside, nestled among old cloths, were more map fragments. And there it was, her father's leather-bound journal. A wave of triumphs and raw emotion washed over her. Esther carefully picked up the journal, feeling its familiar weight. She sat down on a smooth rock, ignoring the dampness. Her fingers traced the worn leather cover. Then she opened it and began to read the dense handwriting. Her expression shifted, absorbing each word, from surprise to understanding. The secrets of her father's life were finally unfolding. While Esther was engrossed in the journal, Douglas stood guard. He positioned himself at the cave entrance, his back to Esther. His watchful eyes scanned the vast, empty sea outside. A concerned look creased his weathered face. He knew that finding this place was only the beginning. The journey was far from over, and dangers might still lurk. While Esther was engrossed in the journal, Douglas stood guard. He positioned himself at the cave entrance, his back to Esther. His watchful eyes scanned the vast, empty sea outside. A concerned look creased his weathered face. He knew that finding this place was only the beginning. The journey was far from over, and dangers might still lurk. The journal was not just a diary, it was a lifetime of secrets. Page after page showed detailed sketches of strange symbols, almost identical to those on the map fragments. Complex equations filled the margins, alongside notes about quiet zones and geological resonance. My father had been studying something truly profound here. Then I found a personal entry, dated years after he left. He wrote about a burden and the danger of discovery. My father explains he had to leave, not because he didn't care, but to protect me. Others, he said, wanted to exploit these unique places, and he could not risk my safety. My long-held resentment, the anger I had carried for years, began to melt away. It transformed into a profound understanding, and then a deep, aching sorrow. His absence was not abandonment, it was an act of love, a sacrifice. He had chosen a lonely path to keep me safe. The very last entry was urgent, almost frantic. It spoke of a rival group that was closing in, seeking the same power. My father mentioned a final, critical location on the island, one he was desperately trying to secure before they could reach it. The words made my heart pound with a new kind of fear. With trembling hands, I quickly pulled out all the map fragments. The symbols, the lines, they suddenly made sense. I carefully pieced them together on the dusty cave floor. They formed a complete, intricate map of the entire island, pointing clearly to a specific, jagged peak. Just as I showed the complete map to Douglas, a sudden shadow fell over the cave entrance. Two imposing figures appeared, blocking the last sliver of natural light. Their silhouettes were large and menacing against the brighter outside world. We were no longer alone. One of the men, a tall, broad-shouldered figure, stepped forward. His voice was low and gravelly as he demanded, "The compass and the maps, now." Douglas instinctively moved in front of me, a silent protector. A tense standoff began in the confined space, the air thick with unspoken threats. Douglas didn't hesitate. He grabbed the lantern he had brought and hurled it with surprising force towards the figures. It shattered, causing a momentary burst of light and confusion. He shoved me hard towards a small, dark fissure in the cave wall, yelling, "Go! Get out of here!" Tears stung my eyes, but I scrambled through the narrow passage, the rough rock scraping my clothes. I emerged outside, gasping, and ran towards the boat, clutching the journal and maps tightly. I looked back towards the cave, my heart aching, hesitating for just a second. Then I started the engine. Alone on the boat, moving away from the island, the salt spray on my face felt like a baptism. I looked at the geodetic compass, then at the complete map in my hands. My face was no longer soft or uncertain. It was filled with a new, powerful purpose. I would finish what my father had started.
Es momento de la trivia. Te haré 2 preguntas sobre la historia que acabas de escuchar. Piensa bien las respuestas y déjalas en los comentarios. Pregunta número 1. ¿Cuál fue la primera reacción de Douglas Finch al ver la brújula de Esther? Tómate tu tiempo para pensar. Pregunta número 2. ¿Qué acción realizó Douglas para ayudar a Esther a escapar de los intrusos en la cueva? Esas son las 2 preguntas de nuestra trivia. No olvides dejar tus respuestas en los comentarios. Me encanta leer lo que piensan sobre las historias.
Si te gustó el video, pon me gusta, suscríbete y activa la campanita para ver más historias.